Everybody. Supposed to be a stormy day here in Kentucky, which I'm looking forward to. I love that type of weather. I was just going to do a book review today on The Secret Archives of the Vatican by Maria Luisa Ambrosini with Mary Willis. I don't know, this is probably going to be, well, it will be actually technically my second negative book review. I was kind of disappointed in this book, which it's not all the author's fault. A lot of the Vatican archives, the secret Vatican archives, it's super hard to, get to it and study it. There's time frames, like I think you only get like a 2-hour time frame. There's one part here. I'll read you a little part just to tell you how unorganized some of it is and how insane it is to study it. This is page 18 of the book. I have seen rooms full of documents that are virgin in terms of research. Often the folders of the documents have carefully gathered into volumes and filed by year, but what they contain no one knows. Opening off the meridian room in the Tower of the Winds, I saw a small square room where in a single great bookcase there were 9,000 packages of unexplored documents. These packages were not large, about the size of a small magazine, and I was told in order to inventory, not study, but simply inventory in chronological order, one package, two experts would need a week of steady work. To do all of the 9,000 packages in the single bookcase, they would need 180 years. So a lot of the Vatican archives are unorganized, and they just, you can only get in there for 2 hours. You can only check out one book. Can't check out multiple books to reference each other. And the writers describe that it is ridiculous. Like, most people that go in to study the secret Vatican archives, they just get frustrated and leave. Which, I don't know, they can do something about that, in my opinion. And I know part of the reason that it's a secret archives is because they don't want the books to be destroyed, but I think part of it, they're covering up a lot of ancient knowledge, which is a shame, because, I mean, there's been, you'll hear me talk about the Library of Alexandria. I mean, that's all of our ancient knowledge that has been lost. The first time was from warfare. I think it was Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Both of them were married to Cleopatra at one time. Which actually, if you want to read about that, there's another book. It's called Cleopatra, A Brief History. Yeah, A Brief History of Cleopatra. It's a pretty short book, but it crams a lot of information into your brain. But, yeah, I mean, to me, I compare it to that. You have all this knowledge, and we know very little about the past. I mean, a lot of these Egyptologists or just people who study ancient history in general, they have to do a lot of guesswork and stuff on a lot of things, because there is that knowledge there in the Vatican archives, I'm sure, but you can't look at it. You're not allowed to. And a lot of it was destroyed with Alexandria, which is a shame. Which I actually found another little thing relating to that in this book. It's page 9. Following his last raid on the secret archives was made by Napoleon. Following his dream of a European library, a world brain, he took nearly all of the secret archives to France. In this period that followed the breaking of the empire, nearly 2,000 of the registers were lost. Many of them were sold as waste paper to grocers, drugstores, where sheets torn from there were used for wrapping parcels. I was like, oh God, that's terrible. the authors that wrote this book, they kind of wrote it from like an agnostic point of view, it seems like, which is fine, which is cool. I'm all for that. I'd like to read about the Vatican archives without being preached to, I did like that about the book. Like I said, it was just kind of boring. Like a lot of it's history, and there is good stuff in there. I mean, there's warfare and crazy kings and evil popes, and which, I mean, at this point in time, I'm not gonna Christian bash, but the Vatican's done some evil shit. But like even in the book, they talked about a couple parts, a couple books they came across, like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and they're like, well, we're not really gonna get into it because the Vatican, mainstream Christianity says that it's pretty much like pulp fiction, and I was like, wait, what? That sounds cool as hell. I want to hear about it, and they just glossed over it in this book, which right now I'm reading the Book of Enoch, which is about the fallen angels mating with the daughters of men and creating Nephilim. And so I actually got to pick up the book, and I'm reading it now, which is it's a pretty dope book. Yeah, there's just a couple things I found in here that I came across, a couple passages I wanted to read you I thought was neat. Apparently the Vatican used slaves, which is not surprising, because the Bible is pro-slavery, and if you don't know that or you disagree, just read the Bible. I've read it 6 times. So some of the documents, this is page 53, some of the documents deal, though, in a humanitarian vein with slavery in the church. The monasteries use slaves for agricultural and domestic work. There are various formularies for the donation of slaves, for their exchange between monasteries, and for their manumission, sometimes done in a church ceremony. In one of the model documents, the abbot of a monastery informs the Pope that a serf of his monastery intends to marry a slave woman attached to the pontifical patrimony, and asks the Pope if he may give him another slave as a substitute. Permission is granted. So I did think that was kind of neat, to see, to learn about, and I'm not surprised. I mean, it's the Vatican, that's Christianity. I thought this was a pretty crazy part. It's talking about Emperor Nero, which I actually did like this section of the book, learning about Emperor Nero, because I actually didn't know about Emperor Nero. I mean, I'd only heard, like, that's like the big Christian thing, is they're like, well, we were persecuted too. They'd thrown us in dens of lions, and they always bring up Emperor Nero, which, I mean, it's history. That's true. They were persecuted along with, lots of other cultures, religions, and races. I mean, you can't deny that. That's history. But it's page 24. I thought this was wicked, man. Ancient writers say that Peter was crucified head downward in Nero's gardens, among treasures of nature and art, and buried nearby at a place already known by Etruscan name of Vatican Hill. Part of the Vatican area infected with malaria and infested with large snakes was given over to the burial of the dead. Yeah, so I thought that was crazy, man. Nero crucifying somebody on a reverse satanic cross. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what came over me right there. But, I don't know, probably one of the most sickening things in this book that I came across, and I actually didn't know about it, and I've never really heard anybody bring it up, is the Catholic Church had what they call castrati, which is basically, this is going to sound crazy, but it's real, human instruments. These little boys, their fathers would give them to the church, and they would cut their testicles off, so that way when they grew older, they would still have a higher voice, and they would use them in the choir. And I was like, oh, okay, like, I'm a father. I don't have a little boy. I have a little girl, but I can't imagine, you know, giving my kid to the church and them mutilating their sex organs to turn them into a musical instrument. But, I mean, that's Christianity. You know, that kind of goes back to, like, the story of Abraham when he was asked to sacrifice his own son. I don't know. At that point, if I was hearing voices and asked to sacrifice my own son, I would be like, well, no. One, I'm leaving this religion. I'm leaving behind this God. And two, like, I'd check myself in. You know, I couldn't imagine harming my kid, like sending her off to become a musical instrument or a voice telling me to sacrifice her. Like, I'd be like, nope, I got to go to the doctors, man. Like, something's wrong. I got a brain tumor or mental issues. Well, let's get off that topic. The book did, I have to say, that in the center of the book, there's a lot of cool photos, like this one here. It's an old Mithra shrine. It's under Basilica of Saint Clemente, but it's some Mithric shrine they found, which is pretty much sun worship. A lot of Christianity pretty much took sun worship and kind of morphed it into their own thing, because sun worship predates Christianity, like Mithraism and ancient Egyptian religion. Here's another dope picture I found in the book. That's a mummified skull. The skull of St. Lawrence, the librarian, preserved in Matilda Chapel, Vatican City. So that's some wicked stuff. But, I mean, I don't know. The only complaint I had, here's some more Vatican archive photos of what it looks like. I'll show you a little bit of that, because it is kind of cool to see it. It's, you know, there's a little study room, some tomes. It is kind of cool to see it, what little they do show you, because we're not allowed to see it. And I'm sure this book, there's another picture. I'm sure this book was definitely scanned through by the Vatican or people that worked for the Vatican. So I'm sure there's a lot that could have been in the book that wasn't allowed to. They're like, nah, you ain't putting that in there. It does, like I said, it does put a lot of history. It shows you a lot of bloody and fucked up history of the Christian church on stuff they did. Gets a little bit into the Knights Templar and Jacques de Molay, which is pretty cool. If you don't know who they are, there's I would advise getting like a book or two on them, not actually just Googling it and researching it, because their stuff's pretty deep. It's pretty cool. A lot of people say the Knights Templar are like the precursor to Freemasonry. Yeah, check them out. Gets into Emperor Nero, like I said, was pretty cool, informative. I didn't know about it. So I did learn some stuff from the book, definitely. I learned a lot from the book, but a lot of it was just kind of boring. Like, I felt like I was falling asleep half the time reading it. I don't know, I read the entire book, obviously, that's why I'm reviewing it, but towards the end, I was just like, I want this to be done. I'm just ready to read something else. So, I mean, that's my second negative book review. I tried to, honestly, I wanted to review this one today because, you know, I did a negative book review on Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which that was actually a double book review in one video. Check it out if you haven't. And I was like, man, all the books I'm reviewing, I'm giving good reviews, you know. I need to do another negative one just to mix stuff up. You know, people, I'm sure, are probably getting bored me praising all these different books I'm reading, but there you go, Secret Archives of the Vatican. Hope everyone has a good day. I'm sure I offended somebody, but I'm not Christian bashing. It's history, you know. It is what it is.